Alright guys, so in today's video we have a very low spot in this concrete here next to the AC unit right up against the garage, and you can see the drip line for the AC unit just kind of holds water in there, and when it rains it floods that area and the water has no place to go. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be putting in a gravity fed drain, and we're going to put a channel drain up against the wall and sink it down to that concrete. So right now we have the trench being dug out and we're going underneath the sidewalk because whenever possible we always do that, and we discharge the line directly onto the road. Now the easiest way to go under these sidewalks is to just use a shovel and scrape the top of the sidewalk and just keep digging, and you switch sides until you get the whole entire shovel underneath, and that's a quick way to do it. So now you can see I'm using the channel drain up against the wall as a guide to where I'm going to be making my cut with the concrete saw. And I'm just going to be slowly traveling backwards with the saw and allowing the saw to cut and move itself backwards. I'm not really pulling that much. The saw is actually kind of slowly pulling itself as it digs down into that concrete and makes the cut. Now I have found that this is one of the best ways to do it, because if you draw a pencil mark or use a chalk line on the concrete and you're cutting with a concrete saw, the water is just going to be washing away that line as you're moving. So you're really not even going to be able to follow that line very well because it's going to be getting washed away too quickly. So the best way is to just use some sort of straight edge, such as a long 2x4, or in this case, like I said, I'm just using the channel drain as my straight edge. Alright, now so up against the wall I only had to make one cut going down because the concrete separates when it reaches the wall. But for the pipe that has to be sunk underneath the ground, underneath this concrete, I'm going to have to make two cuts. So in this case I'm kind of just eyeing it. You know, I didn't have a 2x4 handy, so this is what I ended up having to do. But I'm making the cuts wide enough for that pipe to be sunk down in there. That way enough concrete can be put back so it's a good thick layer. Alright, now once you have your concrete lines scored and cut exactly where you want them, you're going to want to go ahead and use a large pry bar to come down on top of the concrete, and that'll start breaking it and chipping it out. If you have a large section or very thick concrete, like 6 inches or more, I would suggest just renting a jackhammer because that makes it a lot quicker and a lot easier and a lot less labor intensive. But for something small like this, where the concrete, like this was poured, it wasn't even like 4 inches, it probably was like 3 inches thick. So we just went ahead and just used the large pry bar and just broke that up and went ahead and pulled it out with our hands. So we have all our concrete removed and we have our channel drain set into place and leveled out exactly where we want it, along with the main line pipe. Now in this section right here where at 90-degree turns, there was a sewer line literally right next to this area. So instead of cutting through the sewer line and dealing with all that mess, it was a lot easier to just go ahead and use a couple of 22.5 turns and make a bend around the sewer line. That way we didn't have to mess with that sewer line at all. Now always check your level as you're moving down your line, installing your pipe, to make sure that everything is falling the way you want it to. Now as you can see here, I'm setting up those 22.5 elbows to get that bend around that sewer line. It's kind of hard to see where that sewer line is. I should have had them get a close-up of it, but it's right underneath my feet, underneath the pipe is where it bends, and I think it's the sewer line for the washing machine. So like I said, we didn't want to mess with that, so it was a lot easier just to make a couple of bends to go around it. A nice little trick is to have one person on one end of the pipe and you're on the other end setting the glue, and when you fit them both together you can have the one person push to get that fitting all the way in. Now because this yard wasn't high enough and we didn't have enough fall all the way to the road and we couldn't just open daylight the pipe, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a percolation tee at the end. Now the best way to do this, as I showed in another video, is to go ahead and just use a normal clean out tee. You do not want to use a sanitary tee. I mean, you could, but I found it best to use a normal clean out tee because it's flat. That way any water that's left in the pipe can easily travel down and go into your drain stone that's going to be put in the bottom of this. So you're going to want to dig down with a fence pulse digger, and you're going to put 1-foot piece of pipe on the end of that, and then you're going to put a grate on the top end, and that 1-foot piece of pipe is going to stick down to the ground and be filled up with drain rock. That way any water that's left in the pipe after the rain event can easily just percolate down through that drain rock and go into the ground. That way no water is left in your pipe over time. Like I said, you could use a sanitary tee, but if you point the sanitary tee where it's going upwards, then some water will still be left in your pipe. And if you point it where it's going downwards, I guess that would work, because then the water would all percolate out. But I feel like the water traveling, to be able to travel upwards and out and go into the road, it would be a little bit more difficult in a heavy rain event. So I feel that using just a normal tee fitting, the clean out tee, is the best way to go. Alright, so now that we got our main line all set in and everything's leveled out properly, our percolation tee is installed at the end, and our drain is all set. We're going to go ahead and start burying this system up and mixing our concrete to go ahead and put back around the channel drain and around the pipe. Now before you put your concrete back in, make sure you do put some dirt around the pipe underneath it and around your channel drain underneath it, because you don't want the concrete to go underneath the pipe and the channel drain, because it can actually make those kind of float up and it'll offset whatever level that you originally had them at. So we're going to go ahead and just use the wheelbarrow to mix a couple of bags of concrete in, but since it's not a whole lot, and that way we can go ahead and get it mixed up and put back in to get all these gaps filled in. So now when you're mixing your concrete, you want to go ahead and add a bag and then put water in it, and then add another bag, mix those up, and see how much more water you're going to have to add. You don't want to add too much water all at once, and you don't want to add too many bags of concrete all at once, because then it's going to make it difficult to mix. Using a flathead shovel also makes it a little easier, so I would suggest using that. When you go ahead and you're installing your concrete, use a spade shovel so it holds it kind of like a bowl in there, because the flathead shovel, it'll slosh all over the place, but with the spade shovel it'll hold it in there a little bit easier as you're installing it. And with this mix, we made it a little bit more watery than normal, that way it can get in all the cracks and grooves easier. And then he's just using a trowel to go ahead and smooth that concrete out and level it towards the drain and give it a nicer finished look. So now that the concrete's all installed and troweled out and smoothed out and the drain is buried, the next step is going to be testing the drain out. We're going to go ahead and just use the garden hose for that, and we're going to put it at the end of the channel drain and allow the water to flow through and make sure that it all flows out to the street and percolates both out through the top of the grate and down into the drain rock. The other reason why this is important is that way any debris like dirt, leaves, grass, things like that could have gotten into the main line while you were installing it will be flushed out with this initial water hose test. It'll all make its way to the end and it can be cleaned out. Alright, so now about the time it took me to walk down to the end, the water had already reached the percolation tee, and it slowly fills up and saturates the ground. And once the ground is saturated, it's going to start coming out through the top of the grate. Now remember, on a heavy rainstorm, when that channel drain is taking in volumes of water, this process is going to happen a lot quicker than just using a garden hose. It's not putting off that many gallons per minute. So this thing is going to be just gushing out of here and into the street on a heavy rainstorm. The way this works is, like I said, the water has to percolate into the ground in this area and saturate it, and once that ground can't take any more water around the tee, that's when the water is going to really be going over and into the street. So that just about does it for this job. We went ahead and we elbowed off the AC drip line to give it a more finished look, and we used clear sealant to seal between the wall and the channel drain. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please stay tuned because we have a lot more drainage videos to come. And if you live in the Tampa Bay area or surrounding counties and you're experiencing rainwater intrusion into your home or a floody, soggy yard, give us a call. We can come out there and assess the situation and help you design a system that fits your needs. And until next time, this is Aero General Services signing off.